Good evening, everyone, and welcome to In the Loop with ESF. My name is Debbie Cavanis. I am the Alumni Director here at the college, and tonight we will be speaking with members from the Department of Environmental Resources and Engineering. Before we get started, I did want to go over a few things. We are recording this broadcast, and it will also be live streamed, and it will be available afterwards on our YouTube channel. We will be saving time at the end for questions, and you have two ways of asking questions. One, if you are on our YouTube channel and you have a YouTube account or logged in through your Gmail, you can ask questions right there. If you do not, and you want to still ask a question, you can email those to us at alumni@esf.edu. So again, please feel free to ask questions. We will be holding them until the end, but we can see them all, so we will definitely get back to them. So let's get this started, and let me bring on our guest today. So please help me in welcoming Lindi Quackenbush. Lindi is the chair of the Department of Environmental Resources Engineering. So thank you very much for being with us. I'm glad you're here and going to share your story with us.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us. It's good to connect with people.
So some of our faculty or some of our alumni are from a little bit before your time. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. So I know that you came to the college in '95 as a student. So can you talk about kind of how you made your way to ESF and you stayed, and now, you are now the chair of the department?
Yeah, so I have been at ESF coming up on 29 years now, which is a little shocking when you stop and think about it. But as you said, I came initially as a graduate student. I met my now husband as an undergrad exchange student at the University of Maine and wanted to do a graduate degree somewhere within commuting distance of Utica, New York. And ESF and ERE was it. Met Paul Hopkins. Many of our older alumni would remember Paul. And worked and did my graduate degree with him before I transitioned into a staff position for 3 years and then into a faculty position while I was working, initially while I was working on my PhD as a non-tenure track faculty position, and then moved my way through the assistant associate and full professor lines, and have spent the last almost 6 years now as chair of the department. So I've seen the evolution from our forest engineering curriculum through our environmental resources and forest engineering years, and then into our environmental resources engineering.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to say this because I know you're not from Maine. I think everybody could probably tell by your accent. But you did come to us from Australia. So you actually got a husband and 2 degrees out of this.
It's worked out okay. Yeah. Both of them have stuck pretty well, I think. So, yes.
So I know you mentioned you have been chair for 6 years. So that is typically the limit for our chairs. So your term will be ending soon. What do you see on the horizon for you at the college, and what you're doing next?
Yeah, so I've really enjoyed being chair. It's certainly a different part of the college, and I've enjoyed the administrative side of what I've been doing, and I suspect I'll keep doing parts of that, but I have missed teaching, and so I look forward to getting back in the classroom more. I really enjoy the classes, all the classes that I've taught, but at the moment I only get to teach our first year students, and so I don't get to see people moving through the program and working with our graduate students at all. So I'm looking forward to connecting with the students as they evolve through our program, and getting back connected with some of the areas that my research kind of overlaps with, and getting back in the classroom there and seeing some of that. So I think that's probably the main piece.
Yeah. And I know you keep mentioning getting back in the classroom, but does that also include some online options that maybe you want to bring up?
Yeah, so I think the campus is looking to expand our open academy, and not just have a division that's sort of offering online programs, but thinking about how we can integrate that. And I think we're seeing a change in our student base. We have a lot of students in the program who are returning for a second bachelor's degree. working full time potentially. And then we have people who are looking to do a graduate degree to grow from a previous undergrad program. And I think we need to add more flexibility and be a little more creative in how we offer our classes. And some of that is likely to be through online courses, perhaps even, sort of thinking about, can we do a, weekend intensive and then online to get connected with people, in person for a very short time, where maybe we could bring somebody in. But I think the campus is going to have to start getting a lot more creative to serve our populations.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that you said a lot of people are going back for second degrees and trying to do that while working full time or having a family. To be able to have that flexibility is really, I think, a great place for the program to be going.
Yeah.
You mentioned our first year students that you are working with. So can you talk a little bit about our students, our current student population?
Yeah. So I just am so enjoying my current first year group of students. We have about 25 students in the first year class that I'm teaching this semester. So some of them are true first year, some of them are transfers, and we'll be moving through the program at different paces. But they are just an extraordinarily engaged group of students. I didn't go back and look at my numbers, but I suspect of the 25 students, I would have had less than 10 total absences for the semester. The students
Wow.
are in class, and when they're in class, they're engaged. You break them into group work, and they just sort of explode in conversations. But they're really engaged in class. But then they're also super engaged out of class, and getting involved in our clubs. Certainly, the ERE club has been really reinvigorated. We had a hard time during COVID keeping people connected, and to see it come back. But our other clubs that the students are really involved, the NIWEA and our Engineers Without Borders and Engineers for a Sustainable Society, and getting people connected, and then they're seeing connections. We have, our ERI club has been really involved in bringing in panels of people. We just had one with GHD with a lot of alumni coming in. The panel was predominantly alum coming in to talk to our students, and they really appreciate that connection.
Yeah, what a great way for our alumni to give back to the college, to come
Absolutely.
back and talk with the students about, their experience, but also what it's like to be working in the field now. I know one thing that we always ask our alumni is, like, what did you wish that you did when you were here, but you didn't do? And having that hindsight, I think, is just so fantastic for our students to hear that. So I love that. So if any of your alumni are out there and you want to get connected with our different departments, please feel free to give me a call. We'll put your knowledge to use. So kind of on the other end of that, we have our current students, then we have our alumni. So can you talk about where some of our alumni are working these days, over the last 10 years or so?
Yeah, our population of students, the largest single group are going into consulting engineering, and we've certainly had a lot of people working with the local firms, Arcadis, GHD, Barton and LaJudas, Ramble, O'Brien and Gear, previously named, EDR, working in consulting engineering, but going in a lot of directions within that area. And I think that's really important, this connection to our alumni. Students understanding what they can do with this degree is really important. And sort of, about half of our alumni in our recent polls that we do are heading into consulting engineering. The next biggest single group is those that are going into government sector, and whether that's we have a number of people working in county government in various capacities, water treatment, wastewater management, and solid waste management, and so on. But then a lot of people going and working with the state, certainly many with DEC, but also DOT, DOH, Army Corps of Engineers, different local, county, state, federal sectors across the board. We have a recent alum working with USGS. Just across the gamut, and then smaller portions going on. A lot of our grad students going on into academia, and but still also those sort of working government and private sector jobs as well.
Yeah, and it's funny. I took a quick look at this list, and I noticed that some of our smaller firms have a lot of our alumni working there, which says a lot about the program and the type of students that we're turning out. We're providing a workforce, and they recognize the quality of that product that you're producing and your staff, that going into the field, that they're coming back time and time again looking for our students. So that's a great advocacy for your program as well, and the college
Well,
in general.
and I think it's just speaking to such high quality students that we have coming in the door. I have these first year students. Maybe our department can take credit for the fourth year students going out the door, but I'm not quite sure I can take a whole lot of credit for how good these first year students are. And I think that just creates this sense of community. You get students engaged, you get students working together, you get students building on that program, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then it's much easier to create good graduates when you have great students coming in, and it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So talking about exciting, what's new and exciting in the department? New faculty you're hiring? Any new programs you're working with?
Yeah, so our faculty are doing extraordinary things, and I will do an introduction to one of our newest faculty shortly. But our longer term faculty are also doing some pretty amazing things. And Chuck Kroll has just got back from a spring break trip to Panama with a tropical engineering course that he's taken, tropical ecosystems course that he took the students on for a really intense week. Looking at the Panama Canal. I mean, what a great water resource experience in person to see that. And so that's been something that we had been missing for a couple of years. Is this international experience? Tim Morin is another one of our faculty members who had taken students to Costa Rica before COVID. That got shut down for a number of years. Chuck has picked up the Panama trip. We've done that for now 2 years, and we're going to rotate back. So Tim is likely to pick up a trip next year, and destinations still to be determined. But again, just giving our students the opportunity to see engineering in a very different perspective and what have you. So I think that's really exciting. Some opportunities like that. But we also have, one of our newer faculty member, Yachi Yu, just received a career award, which is NSF's biggest grant. We've had 2 in recent history at ESF, and this is a substantial recognition of not only her research, but then one of her graduate students just got recognized by the American Chemical Society with a graduate student award. And so to have some of these new faculty, she came to us with sort of bringing in a microbiology focus on environmental engineering, and has been able to develop new courses that we haven't been able to offer before. So we have sort of this new faculty coming in, offering expanding our class offerings, and our long-term faculty continuing a lot of the core pieces that are really critical to the program, but being able to expand them. I think that's really amazing.
Well, you set me up for the perfect segue. So I'm now going to bring on a new faculty and a long-term faculty member. So I'm going to bring on Christine Georgikakos, who is one of our newer faculty members. So Christine, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to bring on Professor Steve Shaw, who is one of our more seasoned faculty members. So at this point, I'm actually going to step off, let Lindi chat with her faculty members, and then I'll come back on at the end to do a little bit of Q&A. So have fun. I will be here if you need me, so just let me know. It's all yours, Lindi.
All right. Thanks, Debbie. I really appreciate that. And thanks to Christine and Steve for joining us today. And I want to first off, welcome you both. And I'm glad you're able to be here to connect with some of our alumni that are watching. And Christine, I'd like to start with you just as a welcome to your department. And so you joined us in September. But can you tell us a little bit about how you're settling in, but where you came from, and what you're interested in?
Well, thanks for having me first. It's nice to connect with folks. It's definitely one of the pleasures of starting somewhere new is making all those new connections. So I appreciate the chance to jump on here and virtually get to know some of our alumni. I came here from sort of back to upstate New York from a postdoc in Connecticut. So I spent a couple years studying agriculture and contaminants down there at the University of Connecticut. Before that was done at Cornell doing grad school. So sort of back in the upstate New York area after a couple years away doing research other places. Settling anywhere, I think, takes a long time. It's nice to have a community of folks around you who are supporting you and definitely excited to help you settle. I think that our department is a great example of that. I think I'm coming in at a time when there's a lot of new faculty in general at ESF. And so it's really nice to sort of be in this cohort of new people, both who study similar things to what I'm doing and folks that do very different things. So I think all of those things make settling a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were hired as part of our water cluster. And so there was a group of people from very diverse backgrounds that came in with that sort of common thread, if you will. And I don't know whether that's helped you to sort of meet people across campus.
Yeah, certainly. So the water cluster has been doing seminars every week that I think are trying to do exactly what you're saying, pull folks together from different areas, whether they are microbiologists, whether they sit in departments all across the campus in chemistry, in our department, in sustainable resources management. And I think that has been a really lovely avenue to do exactly that, to pull all these folks together that care about water in some way. We all do it a different way. And sort of allow the conversation to start for where research collaboration and things like that will go eventually.
Yeah. And part of the water cluster, I mean, it's nice to have, new faculty coming in, but we also have some established faculty. And Steve is one of our established faculty that's also sort of part of that water cluster. And so, Steve, welcome as well for today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm hoping you're this alumni on that are likely to have had you in class. We might have people that are here further back. So if you can just tell us a little bit about how long you've been in the department.
Sure. I've been at ESF for 13 years now. I think the one constant there in terms of my teaching has been teaching fluid mechanics. So I think I've done that the whole time. I think I taught the first class that was taught at ESF. Before that, students were taking it at SU. But I guess my roles evolved over the years. So just like, so now I'm a full professor. I've been undergraduate curriculum coordinator for 8 years. So that's sort of directing different aspects of the curriculum. And then more recently, I've become a co-director of what's called the Healthy Water Solution Center of Excellence, which is funded by Empire State Economic Development Corporation. And there's multiple centers of excellence in the state, but this one is newer just in the last few years. And it's really focused on building partnerships between academia, the private sector, and then sort of nonprofit community groups all working in the water space. So it's kind of been a unique opportunity to provide some resources to bring those groups together.
And it's kind of interesting because, we have alumni in a lot of those different areas too. And, I think this is opportunity for some of our alum to perhaps reconnect with what we're doing in perhaps more of a research area than others might be more familiar with what we're doing in terms of teaching.
Yeah, so the center, the Healthy Water Solution Center of Excellence, we basically all our projects look for a collaborator, and it can either be sort of private sector business or community groups like watershed associations. So in some cases, they're providing in-kind effort, or they're just sort of providing guidance on sort of what they're looking for. So like we have honestly, this isn't an engineering project, but an interesting project looking at the loon population in the Adirondacks and looking at how PFAS and other emerging contaminants might be changing sort of the survival rates of loons. I have a project related to PFAS, but looking at that, working with Barton and LaJudas, they're doing source water protection with communities in the state, and we're developing a risk assessment approach to basically use existing data on detection of PFAS in water supplies, and then looking at an inventory of potential PFAS sources and sort of seeing what the connections are. So to create a risk framework to better do that source water protection. So those types of projects really taking advantage of sort of leveraging academic side analysis with sort of real world problems and direct connections to the community.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've always prided ourselves on, and Doug Daly leads our capstone projects, sort of thinking about the projects that we focus on at the culmination of the program and those projects that really matter. And I think that's sort of the bread and butter of a lot of the research that we do as well, is projects that make a difference, within our communities. But I'll just go back to Christine for a second and ask you a little bit about the research areas that you think you're interested in, and what you've been working in, and how you see that changing as you settle into ESF.
Yeah, so my go-to explanation is usually that I sit sort of at the crossroads of water quality and sustainable agriculture. And I think most of my projects cycle back to those, incorporating those two things in some way or another. My current projects are mostly looking at a slew of contaminants that fit in that emerging contaminant world. So things that people are maybe starting to think about now. Also called micropollutants, things that are often at small concentrations, but maybe have large impacts. PFAS is definitely one of those things, like Steve just mentioned. My current projects are looking at how pharmaceuticals that we use to treat our livestock in specifically in dairy situations, but this could apply to other places too, how those pharmaceuticals move through soil, move through water, and then get into our aquatic systems and move off of those farms. So trying to understand the transport pathways, the physical pathways that those things move, but also trying to sort of layer on top of that a little bit of behavioral science. So trying to understand the social side of what's going on. How can we understand what people think about these contaminants? And then if we understand that, how can that influence how people choose to use them or not use them in the future? So I think right now, that's what I'm really jazzed about, is sort of continuing along those emerging contaminant side of things. But definitely excited to move into other areas as well.
Well, and I think, the comment that you just made about the social science side of things and making sure our students understand that engineering goes in a lot of different directions. And I think that's, really important. And that's been, important within your research area, it seems, to, those connections, what you're doing as well as who you're working with.
Yeah, certainly. I think when I first started doing social science research, I approached it very much as an engineer. And I said, okay, tell me about how you think these things move in the environment and where you think they go. And I went in with the certain perceptions, and I learned that, hey, farmers think about these things in a very different way. And that influences the way they use them. And it opens up new transport pathways that I would never have considered. And so I think if you remove the social science side of it and just approach it as an environmental engineer, we often lose some of that detail that might actually change a lot of the physical transport things.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about, you've just had your first semester, or you're in the middle of your first semester teaching. So can you talk a little bit about, you're teaching hydrology for us and how that's going, and how you're enjoying our largely juniors in the program?
Yeah, I think it's been going great. I think it's certainly taken me a little bit of time to spin up and get used to how the students interact, how they like to engage in the classroom, how they don't like to engage in the classroom. I've really been enjoying the conversations, I think. Hey, tell me what you're thinking about in this area. Maybe we haven't talked about it yet. What are your preconceptions and things like that? And then going from there, like starting the conversation there and then diving into a lot of the technical side of things. I will say that maybe the week before spring break, I had one of my most wonderful conversations with a small group of students that happened to be around still before spring break. And I think that small group connection was awesome. And I hadn't experienced that before. My class is 36 students. And so having that type of conversation with the whole group is harder. But when you have those moments to zoom in for the, 5 or 6 or 10 students that at a time, then I think your conversations are really influential for me as well. Like, it can really change the way that I'm teaching or the focus that I have and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the great things about our program. We're not too big. We do get to know the students. I remember many years ago talking to a grandfather who'd come to our capstone presentations and remarked to me afterwards, he said, you knew all the students' names. And I think we do get to know the students pretty well. And you had an opportunity, Christine, to get to know some of our students. Was a lot of the first year students, but some from upper division as well, when our ERE club did the trip up to the Adirondacks, to the Adirondack Ecological Center. And if you wanted to reflect on that, getting to know people a bit.
Yeah, I think part of some of the upper level students were actually in my hydrology class. So for me, that was another great way to say, oh, great, I get to meet some folks that I'm going to interact with for the rest of the semester and get sort of a basis for the relationship that we'll build. The trip up to the Adirondack Ecological Center, I think, is a really neat opportunity for a lot of students who maybe haven't ever spent time in the winter. We went up there in, I think it was the end of January, like the first weekend of class, and that's a new experience for a lot of folks. Trying to figure out how to behave in the winter, how would you do research in the winter? Um, yeah, I think that we have those places, those resources that we can take advantage of, both for teaching and as well as these like leadership development type things and also research. I think that's super unique, and that's definitely one of the things that drew me to ESF, that there are all of these different field sites and field stations and different centers around the state that people can take advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just talking in the governance meeting we were just in about, ESF's 9 campuses, and sort of thinking about it that way is quite extraordinary. But so, Steve, can you talk a little bit about, you've engaged students individually in research projects, undergraduate students engaged in research, and if you can reflect a little bit on the way that students have got involved, both with your projects and others that you're perhaps aware of undergraduate research and so on.
Yeah, right. I think as a department where we have faculty are involved with their grad students actively in research, we do a good job of bringing undergrads and providing opportunities for them to engage in that also. I guess the ones I'm most familiar with are some on my own. But for instance, I have a project right now in Wyoming looking at what are called beaver dam analogs. So it's sort of this idea of, in terms of a stream restoration technique, where you have incised streams that had basically, due to mostly cattle grazing, the stream bed has incised down into the normal floodplain. So it might be 2 or 3 meters below the normal floodplain. So to try to build that sediment back up, you'd ideally have beavers naturally doing that, but they often won't go in that disturbed stream system. So you put in artificial beaver dams. So for the last 3 years, we've been going out each summer and flying drone flights over the area to basically get top-down imagery of how the channel is changing around the BDAs. So then I've had an undergrad helping me sort of come up with techniques to process that drone imagery to look at sort of how the channel morphology has changed. So that's been sort of a neat example of that, especially really using sort of the knowledge of an ERE student in terms of thinking about hydrology, understanding GIS, and using remote sensing and geospatial analysis techniques, which there's not many programs, I think, where people would have those skills to look at those problems.
Yeah, I have an undergrad working with me on an honors project at the moment that's sort of looking at the spatial side of it, thinking about, contaminants. The area that he grew up in has, high cancer rates associated with, some of the waste facilities in the area. And so sort of thinking about the spatial side, but he's also very aware of the connection to the hydrology side of it in a way that a lot of geospatially traditionally trained students may not have on their own. So that the breadth that we've had. Yeah. Christine, could you talk a little bit about, hydrology you've started with, but where else are you going to go with your teaching? And we've been, developing a new course for you.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited to jump into this new class that I'm titling Engineering Sustainable Agriculture Systems. So pulling the engineering design process and a lot of the things that students have learned in their earlier classes into the agricultural systems that I work with and other folks work with in the department. Yeah, I think that there's definitely some interest there. We've heard from folks across campus that, we've had undergrads who want to do some ag work, and they sort of find that interest in summer internships and things like that. So this course would provide people with a deeper dive into that during the semester. So I think hopefully that brings some interest. And I think that also is a nice plug to say, if there are alumni out there who are working in this field and would like to talk about different content that they think should be in here, or speak to students who are interested in this type of thing, there's definitely flexibility to do all those things. So if folks are interested, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and we're going to be using your course as an engineering fundamentals elective, which some of our alumni may not be as familiar with that particular category of elective. Steve, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the way we've sort of changed the undergrad curriculum in recent years.
Yeah, so right, our curriculum as an ABET accredited engineering program, we have courses people basically have to take. But really, to also cater to people's individual interest, we've tried to sort of expand places where students can choose from electives. So over the years, we've done that by adding technical electives. So those are basically have a broad list of courses that fall under a technical elective, which might be more a business class or a public speaking class, but could also be organic chemistry or GIS class. But then we've also recently added what we call a fundamentals of engineering elective. So that really previously we had everyone take thermodynamics or an energy systems class. So we decided to sort of broaden that to have other categories there. So it could still include thermo or energy systems, but can now include circuits or a basic structures class or something like Christine's class, where we sort of, the core concept that that makes it a fundamentals class is mass and energy balances. So Christine's kind of building the class around that concept. So yeah, we've certainly tried to, and we've sort of heard this from our students, is they want to be engineers, but they also want to have some flexibility to explore different areas within that realm. And certainly environmental engineering is a broad area. So that's one thing we've tried to emphasize in the last few years is to build in that flexibility.
Yeah, and I think it helps our current students to have flexibility in picking their courses, but I think it's also helping us as we're seeing these transfer students coming in with diverse backgrounds from different areas, to be able to give them a little credit for classes that they've already taken, and doing what we can to make the most flexibility in terms of just how people are you're able to sit in a classroom and fill their day with courses. It can be challenging to get schedules to meet. We try to make all of our electives that people can be flexible, but adding that diversity in programming. And Christine, I think your class is an example of that, and expanding into that area. Steve, where do you see, what do we need to keep doing in the program? And where do you see the profession sort of evolving in the next decades? What do we need to make sure that, as you said, we're an ABET accredited program, we're environmental and similarly named for the bachelor's degree. We have things that we need to take, but then we also have flexibility to make it our own, which we've done with that geospatial, ecological, water kind of hybridization. But where do you see us heading in the next year? Near term and longer term?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way the program is structured, I think how a lot of us sort of see the future of environmental engineering is still making sure people have fundamental skills, so things like hydraulics and basic structures and water treatment, and still have strong problem solving skills, but then also sort of acknowledging changing technologies and oftentimes changing amount of data that's being collected. So I think in terms of some of the newer concepts and skills that are really focused on are part familiarizing students with those technologies. So now we have Dr. Bromsley. He teaches a UAV, so unmanned aerial vehicle remote sensing class, where students really get firsthand knowledge of using UAVs for collecting data and sort of the technology behind them. I think part of the class they go out and watch one fly. A grad student actually does the flying. So they see that. Another class that's a new one is this, I'm not sure the exact name, but it's basically an environmental sensor deployment class. So students basically build the specific one. This is with Dr. Tim Morin, is what's called the eddy covariance tower, an eddy flux tower that measures greenhouse gases. So Tim uses this in his research, but he has the students in there basically constructing sort of from the ground up. So it's sort of the electronics, the basic kind of coding of the data loggers, and then the actual physical installation of the sensor. So it's things like that we can envision in New York State, and actually DEC funded one of Tim's towers in a wetland in the Hudson. But as we look at ways to have carbon credits and reduction in greenhouse gases, this is the kind of thing that we'll probably see more of these installed across the state. And sort of our students are getting kind of firsthand look at, what are these sensors like, and how do we actually install them?
Yeah, and that whole, the sense of development piece is, such a diverse application area and getting students trained that way. And, one of the most very recent developments that sort of we've had is we've just found out that we're going to be hiring an instructor within the department to start teaching physics. And we can sort of go back and evolve some of our students' training. Instead of having the students taking physics at SU, we can potentially bring in some new ideas within, perhaps physics too, and in terms of preparing people for moving on to those advanced courses. So I'm not quite sure whether we have any questions that we've had come in. If Debbie has any questions there.
So I'm going to jump back in. We don't have any questions yet, but you guys had such a great job of kind of presenting so much information. Hopefully they'll just kind of mulling it over and we'll get a few questions. But I know for my part, if we have alumni that want to get involved with you, maybe on a project, maybe coming in and speaking with your classes, is there a central location besides my office, which they can always go through? But is there a central location over in the department that they should be inquiring about?
Well, and I think, starting in the chair's office is always a good spot to start, and we can connecting alumni to our student groups is just such a great way. As I mentioned, we had the recent panel with GHD through the ERE Club, but there's a lot of opportunities for whether it's a company coming in or an individual coming in. But alumni can also always reach out to faculty individually and sort of say, Christine has just put the offer out there for her new course, and people with that ag connection, we're definitely looking for people. We also have our advisory council, which is an extraordinarily important part of the department. Alumni, employers, they help us with our accreditation, but they help us making sure that our department is taking our programs in the right direction. And they're often looking for people to get involved. We welcome alumni to come to our senior capstone presentations, are open to the public, and getting involved there, whether it's just coming to watch and ask questions or being part of the evaluation of those. Our people who have, I've got a position I would like to fill, absolutely reach out to us. We can send that to the students, and working with the career services folks to make sure that we're getting the message out. Our students are really using the Handshake app on campus now and getting things posted. I think that's really, there's a central location for them to go. When somebody sends me an email and says, can you tell the students we've got this opportunity? We do that, but we copy in career services so that the students can go back and browse them afterwards. And I also encourage people to get involved in our career fairs. Our students have really appreciated that connection, partly so much because of how many alumni are able to come with their organizations. And I did hear from a number of people this year that our students seemed really well prepared. They'd done their homework. They came in and, this is what I read about your company, and this is what I'm interested in, and am I able to do this? And so many questions about, what, back to the idea of the electives, what electives should I be taking, and so on. So I think there's definitely ways for people to connect on a sort of a bigger level. Doug is looking for partners for capstone projects, and we've certainly had a lot of alumni connections in that capacity.
Okay, great. And I know you mentioned briefly Handshake. So for those that don't know what Handshake is, it is a platform that our career services office uses, and both alumni and students have access to it. So alumni can go on and post positions, or anybody at your organization. You can go right on, make your own login, and post positions that are available for our students. And it's really nice because we have been in the past been sharing with Syracuse University. So this is something that our students can go to, and they see positions that are specifically for ESF students. So it's a wonderful resource for them. They definitely definitely take advantage of it. But it's also a resource for our alumni. So if you are looking for positions, all types of positions are posted on the Handshake portal. So if you're interested, we can certainly have you get a login and password, and you can also explore. I'm going to put up a nice little alumni at esf.edu. So if anybody, I think this might be the easiest way. So if any of our alumni are looking to get in touch with folks over in ERE or our office or career services, you can certainly email us at alumni@esf.edu, and I will send it on from there. So as I said, that's a main one. It's an easy one to use, and we can act as the clearinghouse for all of these requests. So I'm going to check one more time to see if we have any questions. I think you guys were just too good, and you answered everything that I ever had a question about. So I will just say thank you to all of you for joining me this evening. It's great to be able to have you here and kind of talk about where our program is going, and seeing the changes for some of our alumni that have been out for a little while, and seeing how we're keeping up with new technology and new issues that are coming up. So I appreciate you all being here today. For anybody watching, please join us next month for In the Loop. We will be featuring our Sustainable Resources Management Department. So we'll be giving you a little bit of an update on what's going on in that program. And they have many different majors over there that they'll probably be highlighting as well. So please stay tuned. If you want to watch our other programs that we've done, we have quite a few of them on our YouTube channel. Make sure you check it out and keep in touch. So thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Lindy. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Christine. And this is always the part where I can't find my mouse. So thank you, everybody.